Hello guys, today we're going to be doing a video on GTA 5 using the RTX 3060 Ti. Playing at the high settings. What I want to do though, is I want to actually increase the population density and the variety. Distance scaling will bring up as well. This will make us more CPU bound, but to make it fair, we don't want to have everything on the lowest at the high settings. And then these are the rest of the settings. And advanced settings again has been left to the default value. I'm gonna redo this part since it was nighttime and I want to make it fair. Keep everything even. GPU sitting at 60% to 70% now. FPS is very similar though. 160s and then drops down to the 140s, 150s once we drive up. Wow, 120s even. Sorry. It's a bit of pixelation at 1080p. The game looks much better though. For 1080p, obviously we're gonna do really good. Shouldn't have any issue at all, even at very high settings. But 4K might be a bit of a problem, and 8K definitely will be a problem at those high settings. At this point, driving up this hill should be a bit of a FPS decrease. Let's see how much though. So see right here, we actually have grass now instead of just a textured layer of green, I guess. But FPS is still in the 150s, 170s. But GPU here is pretty much maxed out now, so we lost about 20% GPU headroom. It's not gonna happen consistently, but in some areas you will jump up to 90%. Now at 1440p, GPU is basically maxed out. It's not always though. Sitting in the 70s to the high 90s. FPS is at 160 still, which is very nice. This game looks amazing at 1440p and at high settings. Can't really complain about that right now. Now, did we get any pop in here? Let's take a look. Seems like we get some pop in, but obviously we can change that in the settings. There's definitely some pop in, I think. Oh yeah, like the cars are definitely popping in at the back. Now driving up this hill, let's see. GPU is fully maxed out now, as you would expect, and we're getting 120 FPS. Up to 140. Alright, playing at 4K now at high settings. Getting around 90 FPS. GPU is fully maxed out. Surprisingly, VRAM is only sitting at 4.6 gigs. I would expect us to be sitting at like 5 gig, 6 gig mark, but we haven't moved too far up from where we were at normal settings. Game has been running really smooth though, the whole time. You just gotta make sure that you don't go above the engine limit and the game will run fantastic. And the way you do that is you either go through NVIDIA control panel and put an FPS cap there, or you can just enable VSync as long as you don't have a 240Hz monitor. Alright, we had 90 FPS before, 97 FPS before. Now we're sitting in the 60s, the high 60s. Going up to the 70s to 80 FPS range as well. I think we were sitting at 60 FPS before. We had some dips into the 50s. But we lost 20 FPS basically. 20-30 FPS by playing at high settings. That's a massive FPS. Game looks insanely sharp though. This is crazy. GPU is actually at 100%. I've never seen it hold 100% before. Normally sits around like 95% to 98%, but sitting at fully maxed at 100%, it's crazy. So going up that hill, we're going to fall into the low 20s for sure then. Alright, going up the hill, yeah, far more choppy. We're getting 21 FPS now. 20 FPS. This is like a slideshow at this point. 19 FPS. But look how good this looks. If you stand still and take a picture of it, it's so sharp. That's all it's good for. Alright, let's go ahead and bring it back down to 1080p and go play at the very high settings. Playing at the max settings, everything is cranked up, I believe, except for the advanced graphics and motion blur and all that. We don't need them. 1080p, let's see what we get. Wow, below 100 FPS. So we went from getting 180 FPS at like 40% GPU usage to under 100 with a fully maxed out GPU. Game is super intensive at those top end presets. Now obviously you can go ahead and adjust the settings yourself, since some settings are very intensive and don't give you too much of a visual quality upgrade, while others are not as taxing and they give you a decent bump. So now driving up the grassy hill, we'll drop down to the 60s, the low 60s. This is at 1080p as well, so 1440p and 4K. It's gonna be a bit of an issue. Surprisingly, I thought it would do really well, but well, at least at 1440p anyway. I don't know about 4K. We are sitting at 60 FPS, so it's really nice. Surprisingly, it's running really well. Obviously, we're gonna fall down into the 50s and maybe we're in the 40s on that hill, which is unfortunate, but I guess we are maxed out. I think dropping the shadow quality, reflection quality, and the MSIA a little bit will give us a massive FPS boost in this game. I guess the grass quality as well would be very important, since that area is a very grassy area and that's what's causing us the majority of the FPS drops. But still, we're going to be testing out the max settings, so we can't change any of the presets. Well, that feels really laggy. Feels super laggy, 40 FPS. I think you want to avoid the very high preset if you're going to use presets. 30 FPS. Stick to high if you want to use presets. If not, then drop the grass quality, shadow quality, and the reflection quality with MSIA as well a little bit, up to high settings or even normal settings. Alright, okay. We are getting 30 FPS. Are we at 20 Hz again? Come on, 60 Hz, you can do it. Oh, this feels so laggy. And laggy as in my inputs feel very delayed. And when I turn, it just doesn't want to turn, and then it feels pretty unplayable, even though it's running at 30 FPS. I think on the consoles, Xbox One and PS4, it runs at 20 FPS, 25 FPS in GTA Online, which is, or maybe even single player, I don't even know. But I know in one of the modes it runs at 25 FPS, so I don't know how anyone even is playing that. But we are getting 30 to 36 FPS here. Doesn't feel that bad at 40, to be honest, but 30 feels quite choppy. Oh, by the way, Grandpa, 20 FPS. This is, it's basically a slideshow. VRAM is maxed out as well. These 30 series cards definitely run into a VRAM issue once you get up to those high settings and high resolutions. We are in GTA Online. Let's see how long it takes until I get DDoSed or hacked. So FPS was around 96, 97 in campaign at these settings. So FPS is sitting around the high 70s to the low 90s at best. Normally it sits around 80 FPS. Now let's go ahead and drive up to grass area here and see what we get there. Oh no, flying bike user, dude. Here we go. Okay. You know what? It's friendly. We'll take that. Not a bad lobby so far, I gotta say. I don't want to jinx it, but no one's being toxic, surprisingly. Alright, let's see what we get up here. Getting 90 FPS on the road. As long as we don't fall into the 60s, we'll be fine. Wow, we fall below 60. So close to it though. It doesn't really count, does it? Alright, playing at 1440p. Wow, the game looks so much better at 1440p. Whoa, that's a crazy difference. It looks so pixelated at 1080p compared to 1440p. It's actually insane. Alright, we're still holding 80 FPS, but GPU is fully maxed out now. So we should fall down into, hopefully not the 40s. Hopefully we'll sit around the low 50s, I would imagine. What is this guy doing? Why are you turning like that? Stop. Okay, 60 FPS feels quite laggy now. Wow, 30 FPS. What is going on? So laggy. Oh, so unoptimized, I guess, not laggy. It still technically is playable, but it's quite bad, I will admit. 30 FPS, or the high 30s, is not what I was expecting. So I forgot to mention this, but couldn't try out 8K gaming at very high settings, or max settings, because we ran into a VRAM issue, and again, wouldn't just allow us to push it up to 8K. 4K very high settings in GTA Online, we're getting 40 FPS. I can't remember what our performance was, but I think it's very similar to this. and we're getting 20 FPS in the grassy area, so it seems very similar. I don't think we got 60 FPS in the campaign, so could be wrong though. This is so laggy though. It feels very choppy. Probably because we're running at 24 Hz again, are we? Okay, this feels way better. Who would have guessed? Getting above 30 Hz makes the game feel more responsive and not as laggy. It feels very playable now, actually. Going up the grass, we're getting 23 FPS, so 20 FPS. So very similar to what we had in the campaign. Was the slideshow 15 FPS? Okay. Alright, I think that's it for the video, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. Hopefully you found it useful. If you did, give it a like, and sub to the channel we'll have Richard as well. Alright, see you next time. And for advanced settings, I just kept everything off just to keep it simple. And as always, if you like what you see, sub to the channel we'll have Richard as well. Alright, let's get going. And this game does have an engine limit. It's around 180. And once you go past that, it just starts lagging heaps, like you saw just then. So ideally you want to be able to cap your FPS below the limit so it runs really smooth. Now I am using a 3700X as well for this video, so most likely we will be getting CPU bottlenecked. But we are engine bottlenecked anyway, so I don't think it matters that much. Alright, so I restarted the game, capped the FPS to 170, so we are below the engine limit. Let's go and redo this whole area again, just to show you that it will make the game run really smooth once you fall below the engine limit. Alright, let's go and drive up to the hill next to the highway. The coast, and that normally gives us a decent FPS drop because of the grass, but normal settings doesn't have actual grass, I believe. It's all textured, so I don't think we'll see too much of an FPS dip in that area. You normally see the FPS dip at high and very high settings, especially very high settings. That will give you a pretty massive FPS dip, but normal I think will run just as good. I mean, obviously a GPU setting at 30% or 40% actually, which I didn't realize until now. So I don't think we're gonna have any FPS dips. But we can see the GPU actually rise up, and that's how we know it's more taxing on the GPU. Driving up, like I said before, the ground is just textured. There's no actual grass on there, so GPU usage still at 40% and FPS is at 170. So there was no decrease or increase by usage. Okay, 1440p. It's gonna. Whoa, look at that. Lighting looks bad. Alright, 1440p. Still normal settings. The game looks super clear at this point. Getting around 40% GPU usage, up to 50% right now. Some things look really blurry right now, like this bush over here. Just looks really blurry since we're playing on normal settings, which is the lowest for this game. We are getting some FPS dips right here into the 150s, 160s, since we are CPU bound. If you run a better CPU, then you most likely won't see as big of a dip, or like any dip at all. Gonna drive up to that hill again, next to the highway. Obviously we're not gonna get an FPS dip again, but we'll just try it anyway, just to keep everything consistent. Alright, GPU sitting at 40% here, 44%. And let's go ahead and go up that hill. Went up a little bit into the 50s, but comes back down to, wow, the 30s even. So it's less taxing than you being on the road, I guess. But once we go up to high settings, it will get worse. Alright, now playing at 4K. This feels really laggy. But even though frame rate's sitting at 170, okay, let's look at the settings real quick. Okay, look at that, it's running at 25 Hz, that's why. Let's get up to 60, please. Why is it running at 25 Hz? Even 4K, we're killing it. We're getting 170 FPS. GPU is almost maxed out. We're sitting in the 70s to 80s. But honestly, would not want to play this game at normal settings just to play at 4K. Obviously, I think we can get 60 FPS at 4K, at least high settings, right? But GTA Online is a whole different game. I don't know if that's possible for GTA Online. At think I get around 130. It's like 110 to 130 FPS in GTA Online at a very high settings, 1440p with 3080. So it's super unoptimized, but it might be possible still. Who knows? I think we got Saints Row coming out in 2 or 3 days, but I don't know what time. They didn't say what time. They said it comes out at midnight for consoles. I don't know if that applies for PC as well. I hope it does, but that should be kind of exciting. And now driving up to this bushy area, we're getting 70 to 90% GPU usage. So again, still holding 170 easily. We're playing the game at 8K right now, which is insane to even think about. But we are getting 60 FPS at 8K. Very shocking, to be honest. It's doing a crazy good job. And I really wish Rockstar actually updated this game with the enhanced edition that PS5 and Xbox Series X got, and Series S as well, I guess. So we can actually get some ray tracing and some better lighting and fire effects. I think we're still running the PS4 version of this game, so it's kind of unfortunate, but hopefully it comes out later, I guess. I don't know. It probably might not. It might not actually. Who knows? And then driving up the grass that doesn't actually exist. You're getting 70 to 80 FPS still, so. Oh, 50 FPS dip for the first time. Okay. Alright, let's go and try this out at the high settings now.